Let's talk Tanya for the 11th day of the second Adar. So in this chapter, which we're concluding today, chapter 36, the Alter Rebbe introduced us to the idea of Dir B'Tachtonim, that the purpose of everything is God's desire to have a dwelling place in the lowest realm. And in yesterday's Tanya, the Alter Rebbe told us that this happened once already, by the giving of the Torah, by Mount Sinai. At that time, God was here, fully revealed, fully present over here in this world, something which was experienced by everyone. And the question then becomes, so what happened? So why are we still working towards the goal if the goal was already accomplished a long time ago? But obviously, that didn't last for very long. Very specifically, it lasted for exactly 40 days until the sin of the golden calf. And because of the sin of the golden calf and subsequent sins, that messed everything up. And we no longer have the revelation of God over here in this world. So then the question becomes, okay, so then Mashiach is going to come. We'll have the dwelling place for God once again, but who says we're not going to mess up again? But this introduces us to another fundamental idea related to Dir B'Tachtonim, which is it's not only God wants to have a dwelling place over here in this world, but he needs that this dwelling place should be created by us, by the inhabitants of the lowest realm. Think about it for a second. If God wants a dwelling place over here, he can just appear and say, hi, I'm here. But that's not the point. God wants that it should be real. It should be something that is part of us and that is a result and a product of our work. Because when that happens, then that's something which is permanent and which is lasting. And because the original giving of the Torah was not a result of our work, but it was because God appeared, so therefore it wasn't lasting, and also it wasn't the fulfillment of what God really wanted, and therefore we had to start almost from scratch, not really from scratch, because now at least we have the template, we have that vision of the giving of the Torah, we know what we're working towards, but now we need to do it through our own work. What the nature of that work is, we will find out in the next chapter. But before we conclude this chapter, just one idea, which is that this concept of Dir B'Tachtonim, I mentioned already in the beginning of the chapter, and we'll revisit this a few times, reframes everything. And one of the things it reframes, and one of the larger understandings that emerge, is that we have two words. There's higher and there is greater. And before Dir B'Tachtonim became a popular concept, before the Alter Rebbe introduced it, so it would seem that these two words are synonymous. If something is greater, it's higher. If it's higher, it's greater. But once we understand the idea of Dir B'Tachtonim, we realize that greater and higher are actually mutually exclusive. If it's greater, it's not higher. If it's higher, it's not greater. Because God, his desire, and the ultimate intention, the kavana, is in the lowest realm. So the lower something is, the greater it is, the greater meaning that this is what it's all about. This is where it's all about. So this is true in terms of our world versus the higher worlds. Yes, the higher worlds are the higher worlds. They're higher. But nevertheless, we're greater. The same thing as human beings versus angels. Angels are higher. We are greater. But in our world also, it reframes everything, because in our world itself also, the lower something is the greater the potential, because that is where God wants to be present. So for example, Shabbos and the weekday, Shabbos is higher. But what is greater? What is the ultimate intention? God wants us to go to work, and not in the shul, not at home on Shabbos when we're sitting by the Shabbos table, and to bring godliness over there. That is the ultimate goal. And the same is true in many other areas in life. Higher and greater, we should never, when we see something which is lower, we shouldn't become discouraged and say, let me run away to some place or somewhere which is higher. Let me go away to shul. No, the shul is higher. Your home is greater. And in many other areas also, again, this reframes also our view of this world and our job here in this world, which is to engage specifically the lowest parts of this world. So we spoke a lot about what God wants, but how do we get there? What are the tools that are disposable? How do we create this dwelling place for God? That will be the topic of discussion in the upcoming chapter, which we will start, God willing, tomorrow.